Okay, hit the space bar. That's in the back, the space bar. I'm hitting the space bar. And nothing is happening. All right, I'm going to read about Richard while Vicki comes up. She does this sometimes just so you can give her another round of applause. I'm going to tell you about Richard. Richard has established his architectural practice, I can stretch this, 36 years, and has worked extensively throughout the state of Texas and beyond. His firm's work has always embraced the philosophy of valuing the reader over the author and believes that each project they take comes with its own unique set of challenges and goals. His firm has been widely published in a number of books, magazines, newspapers, including the New York Times. Richard has presented papers on architecture to various groups. It's a good thing this is one of the longer intros. And has used his university teaching to inspire his students to think about architecture holistically. In 2010, Richard's office, don't look at her. Whatever you do, just imagine she's not here and don't think there are any technical problems, but if you know anything about computers, come on up. In 2010, his office founded the Community Design Studio, which provides pro bono architectural services to nonprofits and to those that the design team feels are in need of their expertise. And let's face it, sometimes they need a little extra help. Projects to date include the remodeled offices for Raíces. How many people know what Raíces is here? Anybody? You don't have a clue. And the restoration work of Lermas, a project that is owned by the Esperanza Peace and Justice Center. Continuously pursuing both architecture and art that motivates the observer, Richard has been making and exhibiting his artwork throughout the state. It's hard to believe how long it's been. Has it really been 45 years? Because for the past 45 years, if it says it, I can read it, kind of. All right. For the past 45 years, his work has been exhibited throughout the state. Yes, please give it up for Richard Mogas!
Thank you, and thanks everybody for coming tonight. Randy makes everybody feel like a rock star on drugs. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about tonight. When I was first asked to do this, I got real excited and started thinking about showing a lot of my work that I've been being a part of over all these years in the studio. And I realized that there wasn't a story in that to just show architecture. So I decided to revisit a very unglamorous project I did 45 years ago as a thesis student at UT Austin. And that was a project that became germane, I think, to my practice today, which deals a great deal with the exploration of recycling, repurposing of buildings, experimental means of construction, and a continuing effort to make work and projects that are long-lasting and purposeful in our communities, because architecture is always a permanent part. It's not ephemeral. It needs to be very carefully thought about. In 1970, I was, again, in my 5th year as a final in architecture at UT Austin, and my thesis project was prefabricated housing, working on design solutions that ideally could be affordable and be built by anyone who chose to build their own house, much like life was like many, many decades ago. When you wanted to build a house, you simply found the materials and put it together with the help of neighbors and that type of thing. The dean of the School of Architecture at the time, Alan Taniguchi, who's a prominent name in Jan Jarboe Russell's The Road to Crystal City, was our dean, a beloved dean at the time. He sadly passed on, but he called me and a colleague, John Thompson, into his office and said, if you guys think you have a good idea, why don't you build something in the community and show them that an affordable house can be constructed? John and I had absolutely no experience. I had built a shoe shine box for my father when I was in middle school, and John had built some shelves for his family. But we both said yes to this crazy idea. And the dean helped us secure a loan in a community called St. John, which is an impoverished African American community on the east side of Austin. We bought a lot at a tax sale for very little money. It was actually partly in a floodplain. And we began the project. We chose, so with that, I'm going to start the slide. Okay. All right, here's thanks, at last. Here's the beginning of that house, starting with a foundation that we hand dug, consisting of 12-foot on-center grade beams that would support the walls that ultimately would support the wood floor. We dug, as I said, dug them by hand. It looked like it was going to be our grave for a while, but then is myself on the left at 24 years of age, Jim Dawes, who some of you may know, and Albert Hours have been my friends for years. Here we are pouring those reinforced concrete block walls that would support the floor. Awkward moment. This wood became the entire floor structure, insulation and finished floor after we used a rotary sander to sand it. So essentially it was like a chopping block that became the floor, finished floor of the house. And this is one of the young neighborhood boys helping us, and his sisters up on the floor beyond. We found them roller skating up here after we finished the floor. The house was, when completed, was sold as planned to a young couple completing the cycle of intent. With the sale of the house, we paid each other off, paid the note off, paid the material cost off when we made 7 cents an hour, and I knew I was in the right profession. The front porch in this slide is a good neighbor communication tool, and was the forerunner to decomposed granite is in the foreground. The lady across the street that we visited often had no plumbing in her home. She washed her clothes in a big pot outside, but she put a front porch on her house and told us that that's how you communicate with neighbors, and that was a good investment for her. Jumping a few decades ahead, this is a project we are currently constructing in McAllen, Texas. It's designed using insulated concrete form, and here you see a worker on the left cutting that form with a common saw, and the floor and roof planks on the right. The whole idea is that this is a combination of styrofoam and concrete. This is the interior of that house as it's being constructed. There's no wood framing. The wood that you see is simply temporary to support openings, but essentially when the house is complete, the only wood will be the cabinets in the house. These images are of another project. This is his brother's house we completed just down the road, and it's huge. It's a huge house. But our attitude in the office is that people are going to build big houses. We're going to help them build a house that's efficient and energy is able to conserve energy. This house uses about 1/3 of the energy that most stick frame construction houses utilize. The interiors utilize very cool materials. McAllen, if you know, the valley is very hot 11 months out of the year, so cool surfaces and light-colored interiors. We use a lot of day lighting in our houses, so you don't have to use lights during the day. The expansive gallery takes on a lot of art. All of our houses that we do, we buy San Antonio artwork from local artists, and we've placed art from 20 different artists in our projects. This is a South American family, and they utilize these expansive hallways for gatherings of 40 or more people at holidays. This project incorporates the economical use of plywood strips as a ceiling, exposed metal ductwork, polished concrete floors, simple lighting, and expanses of economical aluminum windows. The owner found some aluminum sections at a military junkyard, and we used them to build the canopy that you see protecting the south-facing windows in this slide. This is the Lincoln Park Pool House on the east side of San Antonio. The design explores the use of durable and sustainable materials. The building is unair conditioned, so in a way it's like a roadside park structure that we had to build very durably, as you see most of those are, and it had to sustain itself through all kinds of weather and use. We assisted a Houston business owner in purchasing a 20,000 square foot prefabricated metal building that had been used as a metal paint facility for industrial projects, and we repurposed it into Class A office space by opening up, taking away walls, putting up a light monitor on the top, and polishing the concrete floors. Here is that south facade with the generous openings of glass and protective overhang. Houston has a harsh environment, so the materials that we typically use in McAllen and Houston are galvanized metals, stainless steel, and aluminum when we build things on the outside of the structure. The interior is white, of course, and we chose international style furniture. The interiors are transparent, which encourages the daylighting opportunities, thus saving energy normally used for lighting, as well as making an interesting work culture. The entire facility has about 100 people in it, and they just absolutely love this new way of officing. This is a residential project in McAllen, Texas, that held over 20 heritage oaks on the site, and we designed a house to fit in and among those trees without cutting one single tree. We typically design a gateway system into our houses because they live so transparently with all the glass. So what you're seeing here is the entry doors to the courtyard that you come into, and then on the right you see the entry gallery with the stairs taking you to the second floor. On the left are the 24-foot sliding glass doors on either side of that living room so they could be opened up for breezes, and the front courtyard opens to the back courtyard. This is the second floor of that project, and that doubles as a library beyond and really accesses the sacred part of the house, which are the bedrooms. The profane is usually on the first level, and where all the good stuff happens. 30 years ago, I was fortunate to be among 6 people who found a building in downtown San Antonio. It was an old mattress factory. We cleaned it up, took all the partitions out, painted it white, and it's now known as the Blue Star Project. This is a piece of my artwork on the right and a detail on the left. Thank you. My office founded the Community Design Studio, as Randy said, a group of volunteers who have an interest in making architecture in a pro bono capacity for those that need it. We're trying to make architecture accessible to as many people as possible without it becoming an elitist process. We think everyone should be able to afford good architecture. If you're interested in that Community Design Studio, please call the office and we'll get you involved. Thank you.
Thank you. You have to stay up here for just a second. All right, I just get to debrief people and ask them some of the embarrassing personal questions that people might have had while you're doing this.
Like they all have clothes on and they're not naked, I'm afraid. But.
Most of them. Okay. How much has changed in that time that you've done architecture? You talked about this concrete and fiberglass kind of thing. How many of the materials are you using now that you would never have dreamed you'd use?
Well, you know, it's been remarkably slow in developing, I think, in terms of changing materials. This styrofoam that we're now using is not as common as one might hope it would be, as remarkably efficient as it is to build with. It's usually you wind up with the same stick construction. I think builders have a lot to do with that. I think builders are going to have to come around and start thinking about different ways of constructing projects.
And now I noticed that people have seemed like, oh, that's cool. When you talked about using San Antonio art in some of the projects, how does that work, and how might some of these people who are or know artists to get involved?
I just, you know, as an artist myself, I'm involved in the art community, and my objective in purchasing art, we don't charge a percentage. We give the artist the full value of the piece of work. What we're interested in is having good work in our projects, and that's the goal of that.
And what's it like to see Blue Star now, 30 years later? I remember when it started. Did you have any idea, and has it turned out how you envisioned it? I know it wasn't just you.
It's had a lot of iterations and a lot of good and interesting people involved in it, and its current curator, Mary Heathcott, is doing a wonderful job. It's a great system. We're glad it's here. It's generated lots and lots of studios and other galleries. It was the impetus for a very dead art community at the time, and we think it served a huge purpose for San Antonio.
Thank you very much. Give it up for Richard Mogas.